Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem wa ba'd. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, beginning with abundant prayers and sending peace upon all of His messengers, the last of them being the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings of God be upon him. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be with you. Hold it closer. Sheikh Ifa is gesturing to me. I can see him indicating that he wants me to speak closer to the microphone. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be here with you this evening. Whenever people can come together across barriers, many of them falsely erected, barriers of ethnicity, barriers of religion, barriers of geographic positionality, to eat together, to get to know one another. We are doing something in the spirit of that Quranic verse, of that verse of Muslim scripture, in which God says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O women and men, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. O women and men, O humanity, we created you from one male and one female. Bringing all sorts of influence here. Right? This is not a lecture. This is a commercial for H.H. Gregg or something like that. Kind of music. We created you from one male and one female. And then we spread you into nations and tribes so that you would come to know one another. And what is parenthetically included there is not despise one another. And the reality of this verse did not become apparent to me until I myself was an immigrant living outside of my country. As you heard the brother mention during my various... We're not finished. Is this candid camera? Now I'm Deloise to come out. Okay. I'm good now? Okay. Until I myself was an immigrant living in a country that was not of my birth. As you heard the brother mention during my introduction, I used to live in Egypt. And I lived in Egypt, I lived in Cairo, and I love Egypt. Anyone who knows me, they know, and I'm a proud Egyptian, right? I'm an honorary Egyptian. But while living there, I found that one of the most difficult things for me to do was to get a haircut. Now, most of you are looking at my head thinking, well, we know the degree of difficulty is not, and you would be correct. However, I'm still very particular about the way that it's done. So I would go to the various barbershops and I'd look at the techniques, and let me tell you, they're a lot more serious about male grooming than we are. Alright? That's another story though. But I went to one barbershop and I requested a haircut. And of course the barber, attempting to size me up, he looked at me and he said, Enter min fain, where are you from? And I said to him, giving myself away in classical Arabic, khammin, which means like guess. You guess where I'm from. And he said, with a surety, I know where you're from. I said, where am I from? He said, Senegal. I said, close, but further west. And he said, there's something farther west than Senegal? And I said, actually, I'm from the United States of America. Then he said to me, oh, you're from America. And he made a reference to a popular Egyptian film. He said, America Chica Bica. Right? I said, yeah, I'm from America. And he said, you have to tell me one thing that only you can tell me. I said, what's that? He said, Obama. Muslim or walala? Is he Muslim or not? And I said, Obama? He's not Muslim, he's Christian. By his own testimony, he's a Christian. And he said to me, وَلَكِنْ اسْمُ Hussein. His name is Hussein. How can he be Christian and his name is Hussein? This is, of course, a reference to the Prophet's grandson, alayhi salam. He said, his name is Hussein. I said, I believe that his father came from a Muslim family and tribe in Kenya. But then, after some time in college, being influenced by the ideals of socialism, then becoming a communist, his father eventually became an atheist. And when I said atheist, we were speaking Arabic, I used the term mulhid. I said mulhid, right? Asbaha mulhidan, he became an atheist. And he looked at me with incredulity. He said, what's that? The man had never heard the term atheist. He said, what's that? And I tried to explain to him as best I could, this is someone that does not believe in the supernatural. They don't believe in anything wara'a tabi'i, like nothing supernatural, nothing, metaphysical. And he said to me, there are really people like that. He couldn't believe it. And then the next thing he said to me was really illuminating. He wasn't thinking about their salvation or how will they fare on the day of judgment. He said to me, what do they do when a baby is born? How do they get married? What holidays do they recognize? He could not imagine life without the social cohesion given to life by religion in his context. He couldn't imagine life like that. And then when I explained to him, lots of people are like that. Lots of nations, in fact, are majority atheists now in Western Europe. He looked at me and said, Subhanallah, huwa ahsanul khaliqeen. Glory be to God. He is the best of creators. And I looked at him and I said, that's it right there. We're doing all of this sensitivity training. We're talking about implicit biases. But for this man, the fact that there is variety in creation, even the fact that God can create people whose worldview is radically different than his, actually increased his devotion and what he believed in. I believe in a God that can create people so radically different than I am. And that's something that increases my devotion to him. One of the poets that I love to read, he said, especially, and I'm thinking about this couplet of poetry and thinking he must have been a Chicagoan. He said, it is better to learn to appreciate the change of seasons than to fall hopelessly in love with summer. There is always going to be change. There is always going to be variance. There is always going to be difference. This is the spice of life and a sign of God's creative power. So the fact that we can look at each other and we're different in our languages, in our colors, and in our languages, this is a sign of the God that we all serve. And we should not be merely tolerating difference. There's a Slovenian philosopher I read sometimes, Slavoj Žižek. He said that when you tolerate difference, it implies hegemony. Somebody is at the top, and they're allowing people under them to exist differently. We don't tolerate difference, we celebrate diversity. We celebrate diversity. And when I come to you as a Muslim, but when I come to any person, I'm earnestly interested in you. What do you believe? What's your organizing? How do you make sense of all of this? Where did you go after Donald Trump was elected? I went to the mosque to pray. Where did you go? Did you go to the opera? Did you go to church? Did you go to the synagogue? I'm interested in you. And the only thing that Muslims are hoping for is that people will show a similar earnest interest in us. We are living at a time that encounter is being degraded. Even when I'm sitting in front of someone, speaking to them, telling them, I am your neighbor. I am your sincere well-wisher. I am your colleague. We work out at the same gym. Their mind is clouded with so many images. of mad Muslim bombers, of angry, vociferous, America-hating Muslims, that they believe that I'm in, what they call it, taqiyya. You know, he's faking. This isn't real. He's dissimulating. He really hates America. I've been your neighbor for 15 years. I'm the guy that takes out our trash together. If I'm mowing my lawn, I'll mow yours. You don't have to believe what they say about me when you can see me. But we can only get to that place of what we call ta'ayush, silmi, peaceful coexistence and celebrating diversity if we're not afraid to actually encounter each other. The ironic thing is that as members of spiritual communities, all of us want really the same things. We want to live our beliefs, and the United States of America is one of the places that we can do that. And we should be thankful for that, both politically and culturally. Another story, when I was in Egypt, I went to a dry cleaner's. Never have your clothes dry cleaned in Egypt. I used to like my sweater. But when I picked it up, it could fit my daughter. And the only explanation the woman gave was, I'm not that good at this, so. That's it? Malish. I'm not that good at this. I just started the job. Right? But I was sitting in a dry cleaner's. And the dry cleaners was run by Coptic Christians. And they were having a conversation, and they referenced a verse of scripture that I was familiar with. So I chimed in. They referenced a verse of the Bible that I was familiar with. I chimed in. And he said, how do you know anything about the Bible? And I said, I grew up in a Christian family, and I come from a Christian community. He said, what? You mean you used to be Christian and you chose to become Muslim? I said, I chose to become Muslim. He said, how did that go over with your family? I said, my mother applauded my decision. My family was really hopeful that my choice of a new religion would help to make me a better man. And my sister converted after me. 3 of my best friends also converted to Islam. And they were like, whoa. I said, what would happen to you? Now, these are Christian speaking. I said, what would happen to you if you decided you wanted to change your religion? He said, my father would kill me. And I thought he was being, hyperbolic or, facetious. And I laughed. He looked at me gravely seriously. No, you can't with me. He would kill me. He would kill me. And then I realized that the open environment that I grew up in, an environment that gives me the ability to think about my religious conviction as a matter of choice. I'm deeply indebted to that. And that I culturally can choose to follow the path that I think is most suited for me and my goals. That's beautiful. Similarly, politically, we have a constitutional right to practice our religions without intrusion from government. And this is a blessing. The second thing we want after living our beliefs is we want to spread goodwill and enhance the conditions of all in our midst. In Muslim scripture, there's a verse that reads, "Kuntum khayra ummatan ukhrijat linnas." You are the best community drawn out for people. And if you look at all of the commentaries on this verse, it says, "Liman ba'atin nas," for the benefit of other people. This is what we want to do. There is no covert operation to change the White House into something other than the White House. There's no covert plan to change California into California or something. There's nothing like that. We want to follow the path of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, of Jesus, of Moses, of Abraham, of Noah, of John the Baptist, of Zechariah, of enhancing the condition of all of those who come into contact with us. And if any of us make truth claims, that we have some claim to to the truth, this is the way that it's demonstrated. It's not demonstrated through dogma. Dogma is essential. In Arabic we call it aqidah. It's essential. I have some, and I'm sure everyone else has some. Even atheists and secular folks have dogmas. But they're very easy. You say you believe in them. To do work, on the other hand, this is what is difficult. To look to your neighbor and to see a responsibility to serve your neighbor, to help your neighbor, to uplift your neighbor. This is much more difficult than just professing belief in dogma. The third thing that we want is we want to see our children reared and raised in a world in which religion and spirituality are not ridiculed and mocked. This is something that we have in common as Muslim and Christian communities. All of us, we watch, what's the guy's name? Real Time, Real Talk, Bill Maher. Right? All of his broadsides against religion and against particularly Islam and evangelical Christianity. All of us feel that this is completely unfair. This is a mischaracterization of these great civilizational forces that have given the world much of the goodwill, much of the spirit of charity and ethos of service that all of us aspire to. This is what we want. And if we want those things, to live our beliefs, to spread goodwill, and to see religion respected in the public sphere, we would come to see each other as allies and not enemies. I want what you want, and you want what I want. And America is actually providing us a place that we can coexist peacefully, celebrating our differences and working in the spirit of our commonalities. This is a great blessing. And I encourage all of you to assist these gentlemen. And I'm sure there are women that are doing the real work. These are the guys I know. Sheikh Ibah, Brother Abdul Aziz, in this effort to, let's break down some of these barriers. Let's have earnest conversation. And let's work to enhance our surroundings. We don't do that through argumentation. We don't do that through debate. But we do it through open-mindedness and a spirit of genuine curiosity about one another. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.